Hi everybody and welcome to Heel Heat. My name is George Coles and on this episode we're doing Revolutionary. The topic for this Revolutionaries, often cited as one of the greatest tag teams of all time, and by many people the greatest tag team of all time, the Legion of Doom, the Road Warriors, Hawk and Animal. So let's talk about Hawk and Animal. If you haven't watched any of my Revolutionaries videos before, basically I cover a wrestler or a team or a promoter and why I think they're revolutionary and why I think they contributed to pro wrestling and how they changed pro wrestling. As it might be obvious to most of you, we have the Road Warriors here. One of the most imitated, one of the most copied teams in the history of wrestling. Again, most experts put them at either the greatest tag team of all time, or if they don't, they put them really close to the top. I personally think that they're number 2. I think the Dudley Boys overtook them, but that's another story for another day. We're here to put some respect on the name of the Road Warriors, Road Warrior Animal, Road Warrior Hawk. Rush! So the reason for this, it's not going to be a deep dive into their career. There's several YouTube channels that have done that. They have their own documentary that you can watch on the WWE YouTube channel if you want to get to that. But I want to just talk about a couple specific things. And the first reason that I think that the Road Warriors were so revolutionary was their believability and intimidation factor. Now, through the annals of wrestling history, there have been intimidating wrestlers, there have been believable wrestlers. You have your Mongolian Stompers, you have the Sheik, you have Gorilla Monsoon, Killer Kowalski, Ox Baker, so on and so on, that were legitimately tough guys that looked tough, that looked scary, that people were afraid of. I believe that the Road Warriors took that and ramped it up to a different level. Here we have two guys that basically come out, pattern themselves a little bit after the Mad Max Road Warrior movie. They have the spiked shoulder pads, the face paint, the spiked gauntlets, coming out to Black Sabbath's Iron Man originally, which if you've never seen the Road Warriors coming out to Iron Man, that is a spectacle in itself. The way they would just go into the ring and totally annihilate their opponents and just smash their way through everything, it was just a phenomenon. And this was happening, the Road Warriors were happening basically at the same time Hulkamania was happening, as the wrestling world would get a boom. As Hulk Hogan was selling out arenas for the WWF, the Road Warriors and Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes and the Four Horsemen were selling out arenas for Jim Crockett Promotions, and everywhere else the Road Warriors would go. The AWA, Georgia Championship Wrestling, which is where they started. I kind of went that in backwards. They went from Georgia to the AWA to Jim Crockett. But everywhere they went, they would sell out. They were the marquee act, or one of the marquee acts. And that's something that wasn't unheard of, to have a tag team as a marquee act. The Carolinas had tag teams as their main events for a long time. However, in the 80s, it was something special. And these guys made the World Tag Team Championships of whatever company they were just as important as the World Championship. And that all comes down to their intimidation and believability. You believe these guys were the ass-kicking apocalyptic warriors they professed to be. It didn't hurt that they have muscles on top of muscles on top of muscles. It didn't hurt that they had one of the best managers in pro wrestling in Paul Ellering, who knew how to talk about these guys and make them seem even more believable. It didn't hurt that, much like I just did a few minutes ago, you'd have Animal coming in, we're going to come into Chicago and we're going to and then tell him, Hawk. And then Hawk would say some crazy thing. This isn't a direct quote, but he would say something to the effect of, well, I'm going to rip out their eyeballs and eat it and feed it to my fish, or something crazy. And then it would always end up with, oh, what a rush. I mean, these guys were just insanely charismatic and insanely believable. You believed these two monsters, which was what they were, basically. This was the wrestling world unleashing two Jason Voorheeses on the tag team divisions that they would be a part of. And they revolutionized how wrestling was seen from that. Their believability, their intimidation, that changed the wrestling game. And if you want to see how directly it changed wrestling, just look at the teams and the imitators that came in their wake. First up, we have the most egregious, the one that basically took their look down to the haircut. That's the Powers of Pain, Warlord and the Barbarian. Two great wrestlers. I love them as a team. I love the Powers of Pain team. But they were almost certainly a 100% copy of the Road Warriors. I mean, like I said, they even had the same haircuts. Then you look at the one that started off as kind of a imitation, I would say, and that would be Demolition. I have a lot of trouble saying that Demolition is a direct imitation of the Road Warriors. Yes, there's a lot of similarities, and maybe in the beginning it was meant to be that. It was meant to be the WWF's version, or because they didn't have the Road Warriors, they were creating their own Road Warriors. However, I think Demolition carved their own path with their own style that was enough different from the Road Warriors that I believe that they broke out of that Intimidators aspect. Some people don't, I do. Then you have teams like the Blade Runners. If you're not familiar with the Blade Runners, that would be the future Ultimate Warrior and Sting, who I believe were, if I remember right without looking it up, it was Rock and Blade or something to that effect. I mean, they had the Road Warrior face paint. They had the black tights. They did basically the Road Warrior look. And these were just 3 of the famous teams. There were solo wrestlers that took inspiration from the Road Warriors. You could say someone like Goldberg took the Road Warrior style and ran with it. The Road Warriors didn't invent the dominating man. They didn't invent the big man. They didn't invent the face-painted wrestler. They invented that as a total package. Every big imposing wrestler that put paint on their face after the Road Warriors had to take inspiration from the Road Warriors. And just the sheer amount of Road Warrior clones that were out there, we just scratched the tip of the iceberg. I guarantee if you look it up, every promotion had a Road Warriors act somewhere in there because of what the Road Warriors did and how explosive the Road Warriors were. Think about this like if you were a music fan, and if you don't remember the Road Warriors on their time, and you're a music fan maybe, think about Nirvana. When Nirvana got really massive, every record company scrambled to get their Nirvana. And you'd have other groups came out and other groups in their wake, whether it be Bush or Candlebox or Silverchair. They all kind of fit in that Nirvana type style. Or if you go a decade before that, the power ballads. When once a heavy metal or glam metal band would put out a power ballad, everyone followed suit, and they all kind of copied off each other. This is the exact same thing that happened in wrestling. The Road Warriors created Road Warrior clones all over the world, and that's part of their lasting impact. Part of the fact that to this date, if you have a tag team that wears face paint, look at the Ascension for a reference, who was an extremely gifted tag team. But once they put the face paint on, they became Road Warrior ripoffs. But for that, for their impact, for the fact that they were one of the most influential teams that's ever done it, as much as you hear wrestlers say they got into wrestling for Stone Cold or Hulk Hogan or Ric Flair, there's just as many wrestlers that got into pro wrestling because of the Road Warriors. There's just as many kids that their favorite wrestlers growing up were the Road Warriors, and they defined a generation of wrestling. They were the greatest tag team of that generation, in a generation that had great teams like Tully and Arn, the Midnight Express, the Russians, the Rock and Roll Express, the Rockers, Demolition, the Hart Foundation, the British Bulldogs, the Fantastics, the Freebirds, the Von Erichs. Up and down, all over the world, there were great tag teams, but the Road Warriors were head and shoulder pads above all of them. Truly a one-of-a-kind team, often imitated, never duplicated. In my opinion, one of the most revolutionary teams in the history of pro wrestling. I wish we would have got one more match, and that would have been the Road Warriors and Dudley Boys. Sadly, that never happened. I think it would have been amazing. I think we would have seen something really special if it did. But alas, it wasn't in the cards. For all these reasons, this is why I consider the Road Warriors revolutionary, and this is why I think they deserve the utmost respect. With all that being said, my name is George Coles, and you've been watching Revolutionaries.